The grand ballroom of Buckingham Palace sparkled under the crystal chandeliers as guests arrived for the annual Children's Charity Gala. 8-year-old Princess Charlotte stood nervously by her parents, Prince William and Catherine, wearing a beautiful blue dress that matched her eyes. She had been looking forward to this evening for weeks, especially because she would be presenting a special award to the charity's youngest volunteer. Charlotte had practiced her speech dozens of times in front of her mirror at home. She knew every word by heart and felt confident about speaking in front of the distinguished guests. The young princess loved helping with charity work and had personally chosen which organization would receive the palace's support this year. As the evening progressed, Charlotte mingled with the guests, showing remarkable poise for someone so young. She spoke with charity workers, thanked donors for their generosity, and even helped serve refreshments to some of the children who had been invited as special guests. Her natural warmth and genuine interest in others made her a favorite among everyone present. Queen Camilla arrived fashionably late, wearing an elegant emerald gown and a stunning diamond necklace. She made her way through the crowd, greeting various dignitaries and posing for photographs. Charlotte noticed her step-grandmother's arrival and felt a flutter of nervousness. Camilla had always been kind to her, but Charlotte sometimes felt intimidated by her regal presence and sharp wit. The time came for Charlotte to deliver her speech. She walked confidently to the small stage that had been set up at one end of the ballroom. The microphone was adjusted to her height, and she looked out at the sea of expectant faces. Taking a deep breath, she began to speak about the importance of helping children in need and how everyone, regardless of age, could make a difference in the world. Charlotte's speech was heartfelt and genuine. She spoke about visiting a local children's hospital, where she had met brave young patients who inspired her with their courage. She described how their stories had motivated her to become more involved in charity work and how she hoped others would join her in making the world a better place for all children. The audience listened intently as Charlotte continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. She talked about the specific charity they were supporting that evening, explaining how the money raised would help provide educational opportunities for underprivileged children around the world. Her passion was evident, and many guests found themselves moved by her sincere words. As Charlotte neared the end of her speech, she noticed Queen Camilla whispering something to the lady sitting beside her. Both women glanced in Charlotte's direction and then looked away quickly. Charlotte felt a moment of uncertainty but pressed on. Determined to finish strong, she concluded her speech by presenting the award to 12-year-old Emma, a remarkable girl who had organized fundraising events in her own neighborhood despite facing personal challenges at home. Charlotte beamed as she handed over the beautiful crystal trophy, and the audience erupted in enthusiastic applause. After stepping down from the stage, Charlotte was surrounded by well-wishers who praised her eloquent speech and mature presentation. She felt proud of her performance and grateful for the positive response from the guests. Her parents, William and Catherine, approached with proud smiles and warm hugs, telling her how wonderfully she had done. However, Charlotte's joy was short-lived. As she made her way toward the refreshment table, she overheard Queen Camilla speaking to a group of prominent socialites near the palace's famous portrait gallery. Camilla's voice carried clearly across the marble floor as she made what she probably thought was a private comment. "Well, that was quite the performance," Camilla said with a slight laugh. "Though I do think someone should have reminded dear Charlotte that charity speeches work best when they don't sound quite so rehearsed. Children should speak from the heart, not recite memorized lines like little trained performers." The words hit Charlotte like a physical blow. She stopped walking and felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. Several guests had clearly heard Camilla's comment, and Charlotte noticed a few uncomfortable glances in her direction. She had worked so hard on her speech, practicing until every word was perfect, and she had genuinely meant every sentiment she expressed. Charlotte's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back quickly. She couldn't let anyone see how hurt she was, especially not at such an important public event. Instead, she excused herself and hurried toward the palace gardens. Needing fresh air, and a moment to compose herself away from the curious stares of the guests, standing among the beautiful rosebush that her great-grandmother Queen Elizabeth had loved so much. Charlotte felt overwhelmed by embarrassment and confusion. She had thought her speech went well, and everyone else seemed to think so too. Why had Queen Camilla spoken about her that way? Did she really sound rehearsed and unnatural? The young princess sat on a marble bench and tried to understand what had just happened. She replayed Queen Camilla's words in her mind, each repetition making her feel worse. Charlotte had always tried to be respectful and proper, just as her parents had taught her. She practiced her public speaking because she wanted to represent her family well and make a positive difference in the world. As she sat alone in the garden, Charlotte wondered if she should go back inside and apologize to Queen Camilla. Maybe she had done something wrong without realizing it. Perhaps her speech really had sounded too rehearsed, and Camilla was trying to help her improve for next time. Even if her words had been hurtful, the sound of footsteps on the gravel path interrupted her thoughts. Charlotte quickly wiped her eyes and straightened her dress, preparing to return to the gala with a brave smile. She couldn't let this moment ruin the important work they were doing for charity. And she certainly couldn't let her personal feelings interfere with the palace's public image. Little did Charlotte know that someone had witnessed the entire exchange between her and Queen Camilla's comments. Someone whose job it was to protect the royal family, not just from physical threats, but from any situation that might cause them harm or distress. This person had been watching carefully, and what they had observed was about to set in motion a series of events that would shake the very foundations of the royal household. Captain James Morrison had served the royal family for 15 years as head of the palace security detail. He was a man of impeccable integrity, unwavering loyalty, and sharp observational skills that had kept the royal family safe through countless public events and private moments. Morrison had witnessed many things during his years of service, but tonight something had crossed a line that he could not ignore. From his position near the ballroom's entrance, Morrison had watched Princess Charlotte deliver her speech with obvious pride and nervousness. He had seen her preparation for weeks leading up to this event, observing her practice sessions in the palace corridors when she thought no one was watching. The young princess had shown remarkable dedication and genuine care for the cause she was supporting. Morrison had also been present when Queen Camilla made her cutting remarks about Charlotte's performance. His trained ears had caught every word, and his experienced eyes had noticed exactly who else had heard the comment. More importantly, he had seen the devastating effect those words had on the young princess as she fled to the gardens. As head of security, Morrison's primary duty was to protect the royal family from all threats, both external and internal. He had always interpreted this responsibility broadly, understanding that emotional and psychological harm could be just as damaging as physical danger, especially to a child. What he had witnessed tonight fell squarely within his scope of protection. Morrison followed Charlotte to the gardens, maintaining a respectful distance while ensuring her safety. He watched as the young princess struggled to compose herself, her small shoulders shaking with suppressed emotion. It reminded him of his own daughter, who was close to Charlotte's age, and he felt a surge of protective anger toward anyone who would deliberately hurt a child. After Charlotte returned to the gala with remarkable composure for someone so young, Morrison made a decision that would have far-reaching consequences. He activated his encrypted communication device and sent a priority message to his immediate supervisor, the head of Royal Protection Services. The message was brief but clear. There had been an incident involving Princess Charlotte that required immediate attention and documentation. Within minutes, Morrison received a response requesting a full report. He was instructed to complete his observations in writing and submit them through proper channels before the end of the evening. This was standard protocol for any incident involving members of the royal family. Regardless of how minor it might seem, Morrison spent the remainder of the gala carefully observing the interactions between the various royal family members. He noticed that Charlotte maintained her public composure admirably, continuing to engage with guests and fulfill her duties despite her earlier distress. However, her usual sparkle was noticeably dimmed, and those who knew her well might have detected the forced nature of her smiles. Queen Camilla, meanwhile, seemed completely unaware that her comments had caused any harm. She continued to socialize with guests, pose for photographs, and make remarks about various aspects of the evening's events. Morrison noted that she made no attempt to speak privately with Charlotte or acknowledge the young princess's successful presentation. As the gala wound down and guests began to depart, Morrison compiled his detailed report. He documented the timeline of events, the exact words he had heard Queen Camilla speak, the witnesses present, and his observations of Princess Charlotte's emotional state both before and after the incident. He included his professional assessment that a member of the royal family had been subjected to unnecessary, public humiliation by another family member. Morrison's report followed a strict chain of command, first reaching the head of Royal Protection Services, then the private secretary to the Prince of Wales, and finally landing on the desk of the most senior palace administrator. Each person who reviewed the report understood its serious implications, not just for family harmony but for the reputation and stability of the monarchy itself. The report also reached Prince William's personal staff, who were responsible for briefing him on any matters affecting his children's well-being. They knew that William was extremely protective of his children and worked hard to shield them from unnecessary stress or public scrutiny. The news that Charlotte had been publicly criticized by Queen Camilla would not be well received. By the following morning, Morrison's report had created ripples throughout the palace hierarchy. Senior staff members held urgent meetings to discuss how to handle the situation. Some argued that it was a private family matter that should be resolved internally without formal intervention. Others insisted that the incident represented a breach of protocol that could not be ignored. The debate centered around several key concerns. First, there was the immediate welfare of Princess Charlotte, who had been hurt by someone she should have been able to trust and look up to. Second, there were questions about Queen Camilla's judgment in making such comments in a public setting where they could be overheard. Third, there was the broader issue of maintaining proper respect and support among royal family members, especially when it came to protecting the children. Morrison found himself at the center of these discussions. His colleagues respected his judgment and professionalism, knowing that he would not have filed such a report unless he believed it was necessary. Some questioned whether he had overstepped his bounds by documenting a family interaction, but most agreed that protecting Princess Charlotte fell squarely within his responsibilities. The head of Royal Protection Services called Morrison into a private meeting to discuss the situation. Morrison stood by his report completely, explaining that he had witnessed a young member of the royal family being subjected to public humiliation and emotional distress. He emphasized that his duty was to protect all members of the royal family from harm, and that included protecting them from each other when necessary. Meanwhile, word of the incident began to spread among the palace staff through informal channels. Servants who had worked at the palace for decades were shocked to hear that Queen Camilla had spoken about Princess Charlotte in such a dismissive manner. Many of them had watched Charlotte grow up and had great affection for the young princess, seeing her kindness and genuine nature on a daily basis. The staff members who had attended the gala confirmed Morrison's account, adding their own observations about the aftermath of Queen Camilla's comments. Several mentioned noticing Charlotte's change in demeanor and her quick departure to the gardens. Others reported overhearing guests discussing what they had witnessed, with many expressing sympathy for the young princess. As news of Morrison's report continued to circulate through the proper channels, it became clear that this was not a situation that could be quietly resolved or forgotten. Too many people had witnessed the original incident, and too many staff members were now aware of the formal complaint. The palace would need to address the situation directly, and someone would need to answer for what had happened to Princess Charlotte. Prince William received the security report at 7 o'clock. The next morning along with his daily briefing materials. His private secretary, knowing the sensitive nature of the information, had flagged it as requiring immediate personal attention. William was in his study at Kensington Palace, reviewing his schedule for the day, when he opened the folder containing Morrison's detailed account of the previous evening's events. As William read through the report, his expression grew increasingly grave. The document outlined exactly what had transpired, from Charlotte's successful speech to Queen Camilla's dismissive comments and Charlotte's emotional retreat to the gardens. Morrison had included timestamps, witness names, and direct quotes, presenting the information with the thoroughness, objectivity that had made him such a trusted member of the Royal Protection Team. William felt a surge of anger and protective instinct as he absorbed the details. His daughter had worked incredibly hard on her speech, practicing for weeks to ensure she could contribute meaningfully to an important charitable cause. The idea that Camilla had publicly undermined Charlotte's efforts and confidence was both shocking and unacceptable to him as a father. Setting the report aside, William immediately called Catherine to discuss the situation. She was equally disturbed by what had happened, particularly because Charlotte had seemed unusually quiet during their car ride home from the gala. At the time, they had attributed her subdued mood to exhaustion from the long evening and the excitement of her first major public speaking engagement. Catherine recalled that Charlotte had gone straight to her room upon arriving home, claiming she was tired and wanted to read before bed. Now they realized that their daughter had been processing the hurt and embarrassment she had experienced at Queen Camilla's hands. The thought that Charlotte had suffered alone, without feeling comfortable enough to confide in them, made both parents feel terrible. William decided that his first priority was to speak with Charlotte directly. He found her in the palace schoolroom, working on her mathematics with her governess. Charlotte looked up when her father entered, offering a small smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. William dismissed the governess gently and sat down beside his daughter at the small wooden desk. "Charlotte, I wanted to talk to you about last night," William began carefully. "I heard that something might have upset you during the gala, and I want you to know that you can always tell me if something is bothering you." Charlotte looked down at her mathematics book, her cheeks flushing slightly. "I'm fine, Papa," she said quietly. "The gala was nice, and I think the charity will help lots of children." William could see that his daughter was being brave, trying to protect herself and perhaps others from the consequences of what had happened. He gently placed his hand over hers and spoke more directly. "Sweetheart, I know that Queen Camilla said some things about your speech that weren't very kind. I want you to know that what she said was wrong and it wasn't your fault. Your speech was wonderful and you should be proud of how well you did." Charlotte's eyes filled with tears and she looked up at her father with a mixture of relief and residual hurt. "Did I really sound rehearsed, Papa? I practiced so much because I wanted to do a good job. I wanted to help the children and make our family proud." William felt his heart break a little as he pulled Charlotte into his arms. "You did make us proud, darling. You were articulate, passionate, and genuine. Practicing your speech shows how much you cared about doing well and helping others. That's not something to be criticized. It's something to be admired." Charlotte buried her face in her father's shoulder and finally allowed herself to cry. All the hurt and confusion she had been holding inside came pouring out as William held her close and assured her that she had done nothing wrong. He explained that sometimes adults made mistakes and said things they shouldn't, and that her feelings were completely valid. After Charlotte had calmed down, William made her a promise that would set the wheels in motion for everything that followed. "No one should ever make you feel bad about trying your best or caring about important causes," he told her firmly. "I'm going to make sure this doesn't happen again." William spent the rest of the morning consulting with his most trusted advisors about how to handle the situation. His private secretary suggested that a quiet conversation between William and Camilla might resolve the matter without creating broader palace tensions. However, William felt that the public nature of Camilla's comments and the potential damage to Charlotte's confidence required a more formal response. The Prince of Wales also consulted with his father, King Charles, about the incident. Charles was deeply troubled to hear about what had transpired. particularly because he had been working hard to ensure smooth relationships among all family members since becoming king. The idea that his wife had hurt his granddaughter in such a public setting created both personal and institutional concerns. Charles had always been protective of his grandchildren and had made special efforts to include them in important family and state occasions as they grew older. He believed strongly in preparing them for their future roles while allowing them to have as normal a childhood as possible. Camilla's actions threatened to undermine these carefully balanced efforts. During their conversation, Charles expressed his disappointment in Camilla's behavior and his concern for Charlotte's well-being. He agreed with William that the incident could not be simply overlooked or handled as a private family matter. Too many people had witnessed what happened, and the potential for long-term damage to Charlotte's confidence and trust in family members was too serious to ignore. William also reached out to several prominent child psychologists and royal biographers to better understand the potential long-term effects of public humiliation on a young person in Charlotte's position. The experts he consulted were unanimous in their opinion that such incidents could have lasting impacts on a child's self-esteem and willingness to take on public roles in the future. Armed with professional advice and his father's support, William made the decision to formally request an audience with Queen Camilla to address the situation directly. He would not allow his daughter to suffer in silence or doubt herself because of one person's thoughtless remarks. The meeting would be documented and conducted according to proper royal protocol, ensuring that there would be accountability for what had happened. William's request for a formal audience sent shockwaves through the palace administration. Such meetings were typically reserved for matters of state importance or serious breaches of protocol. The fact that the Prince of Wales was invoking formal procedures to address Queen Camilla's treatment of his daughter signaled that this was far more serious than a simple family disagreement. Palace staff who had served for decades could not recall a similar situation arising between senior members of the royal family. The formal nature of William's request, combined with the security report that had started the whole process, created an atmosphere of tension and anticipation throughout the royal household. Everyone understood that the outcome of this meeting would have significant implications for family relationships and palace operations going forward. The formal audience between Prince William and Queen Camilla was scheduled for 2:00 in the afternoon, 3 days after the charity gala incident. The meeting was to take place in the throne room at Buckingham Palace, a choice of location that emphasized the serious and official nature of the discussion. Palace protocol dictated that such formal audiences be witnessed by senior staff members and properly documented. Queen Camilla had been informed of the meeting through proper channels, but the formal language of the request had left her somewhat puzzled about its exact purpose. She understood that it concerned the charity gala, but she had not yet been made fully aware of the specific complaint against her, or the extent to which her comments about Charlotte had been observed and reported. Captain Morrison was asked to attend the meeting as the primary witness to the incident in question. His presence would ensure that the facts were presented accurately and that there could be no dispute about what had actually occurred. Morrison felt the weight of responsibility as he prepared to give his testimony before such senior members of the royal family. The private secretary to the Prince of Wales, Sir Edmund Hartwell, would also be present to ensure proper protocol was followed and to document any decisions or agreements reached during the meeting. Sir Edmund had served the royal family for over 20 years and had never been involved in such a delicate internal matter involving potential misconduct by a senior royal. As the appointed time approached, tension filled the palace corridors. Staff members went about their duties with unusual quiet, sensing the gravity of what was about to unfold. Many had heard whispered discussions about the incident and were curious about how such a situation would be resolved within the traditional framework of royal protocol. Queen Camilla arrived at the throne room precisely on time, accompanied by her own private secretary. She wore a conservative navy blue suit and appeared composed, though those who knew her well might have detected a hint of uncertainty in her usually confident demeanor. She had spent the morning trying to recall exactly what she had said at the gala, and whether her comments could have been misinterpreted. Prince William entered the room shortly after, his expression serious but controlled. He had spent considerable time preparing for this meeting, consulting with advisors about the best way to address the situation while maintaining family relationships and royal dignity. The father in him wanted to demand immediate accountability, while the future king understood the need for measured, diplomatic resolution. Sir Edmund formally opened the meeting by reading the official complaint that had been filed based on Captain Morrison's security report. The language was precise and clinical, outlining the specific allegations against Queen Camilla regarding her public criticism of Princess Charlotte's charitable speech and the resulting emotional distress to the young princes. As the complaint was read aloud, Queen Camilla's expression shifted from confusion to surprise to what appeared to be genuine dismay. She had not realized that her comments had been overheard by so many people, or that they had caused such significant distress to Charlotte. The formal nature of the proceedings seemed to help her understand, perhaps for the first time, the serious implications of her words. Captain Morrison was then called upon to present his eyewitness account of the events. Speaking clearly and professionally, he described exactly what he had observed, from Charlotte's successful speech to Camilla's subsequent comments to the young princess's obvious emotional distress. He emphasized that his report was based solely on his professional observations and his duty to protect all members of the royal family from harm. Morrison's testimony was particularly powerful because of his reputation for integrity and his 15 years of loyal service to the family. He had no personal agenda or bias against Queen Camilla. He was simply reporting what he had witnessed in the course of his protective duties. His account was detailed, factual, and impossible to dispute. When Morrison finished his testimony, Queen Camilla asked to respond. She stood and faced Prince William directly, her voice steady but noticeably softer than usual. She acknowledged that she had indeed made the comments in question and expressed genuine surprise that they had been overheard by so many people, including Charlotte herself. "I want to be absolutely clear," Camilla said, "that I never intended for Charlotte to hear those remarks, and I certainly never intended to cause her any distress. My comments were inappropriate regardless of whether I thought they were private, and I take full responsibility for the hurt they caused." Camilla went on to explain that she had been trying to make conversation with other guests and had spoken without thinking carefully about her words or their potential impact. She admitted that her comments about Charlotte's speech being too rehearsed were unfair and failed to recognize the young princess's hard work and genuine dedication to the charitable cause. Prince William listened to Camilla's explanation with careful attention, but his response made clear that intent did not excuse impact. He spoke passionately about Charlotte's weeks of preparation for the gala, her genuine excitement about supporting the children's charity, and the devastating effect that Camilla's public criticism had on his daughter's confidence and trust. "Charlotte has always looked up to you as a grandmother figure," William said, his voice carrying both sadness and anger. "She trusted that her family would support her efforts to make a positive difference in the world. When you publicly criticized her presentation in front of other guests, you broke that trust and caused her to question herself and her abilities." William continued by explaining how Charlotte had retreated to the gardens alone, struggling with embarrassment and self-doubt instead of celebrating her successful contribution to an important cause. He described finding his daughter the next morning, still questioning whether she had done something wrong and whether her efforts to help others were somehow inadequate. The prince made it clear that this was not simply a matter of hurt feelings that could be easily smoothed over with an apology. Charlotte's confidence in public speaking and charitable work had been shaken at a crucial time in her development. More importantly, her trust in family support and protection had been damaged in a way that might have lasting effects. Sir Edmund documented every word of the exchange, creating an official record of both the complaint and the responses. This documentation would become part of the palace archives and would establish precedent for how similar situations might be handled in the future. The formal nature of the process ensured that all parties understood the seriousness of the matter. As the meeting continued, it became clear that a simple apology, while necessary, would not be sufficient to address the full scope of the problem. The public nature of Camilla's comments and their impact on Charlotte's emotional well-being required a more comprehensive response that would demonstrate genuine accountability and commitment to preventing similar incidents in the future. Queen Camilla seemed to recognize this as the meeting progressed. Her initial defensive posture gave way to what appeared to be genuine remorse as she began to understand the full extent of how her words had affected Charlotte. The formal setting and official documentation seemed to help her grasp that this was not merely a family disagreement, but a serious breach of her responsibilities as a senior royal family member. Following the formal audience, Sir Edmund drafted a comprehensive report outlining Queen Camilla's acknowledgement of wrongdoing and Prince William's requirements for resolution. The document would be reviewed by King Charles and become part of the official palace records, establishing clear precedents for protecting younger members of the royal family from public criticism by senior relatives. Word of the formal proceedings began to spread throughout the palace staff network within hours of the meeting's conclusion. Servants, administrators, and security personnel who had worked at the palace for years were stunned by the unprecedented nature of what had transpired. Never before had a senior royal been formally called to account for their treatment of a child family member through official palace protocols. The immediate consequence was a noticeable shift in the palace atmosphere. Staff members who interacted with Queen Camilla found her notably more subdued and reflective than usual. Those who worked closely with the Prince of Wales observed his continued concern for Charlotte's well-being and his determination to ensure such incidents never happened again. Captain Morrison, meanwhile, found himself at the center of considerable attention from his colleagues in the Royal Protection Services. Some praised his courage in filing the report and standing by his testimony, while others questioned whether he had overstepped his boundaries by intervening in what some considered a family matter. Morrison remained steadfast in his belief that protecting Princess Charlotte fell squarely within his professional duties. The news of the formal complaint eventually reached other members of the royal family through official channels. Princess Anne, known for her direct manner and strong protective instincts regarding family members, expressed strong support for William's actions and concern for Charlotte's well-being. She had always been fond of her young niece and was disturbed to learn about the incident. Prince Edward and Sophie, who had their own children and understood the challenges of raising young people in the public eye, also rallied behind William's position. They recognized that protecting Charlotte's confidence and enthusiasm for royal duties was crucial for her future role in the monarchy, and they supported the formal accountability that had been demanded. The response from palace communications staff was one of careful concern. While the incident had not yet become public knowledge, they understood that such situations had the potential to create significant public relations challenges if they were not handled properly. They began developing contingency plans for various scenarios. Should news of the incident leak to the media, Queen Camilla, after several days of reflection, requested a private meeting with Princess Charlotte to personally apologize for her comments. This request was carefully considered by Prince William and Catherine, who wanted to ensure that any interaction would be helpful, rather than potentially harmful to their daughter's emotional recovery. The meeting between Camilla and Charlotte was arranged to take place in the private sitting room at Kensington Palace, with Catherine present to provide support and oversight. The informal setting was chosen to make Charlotte feel as comfortable as possible, while the presence of her mother ensured that the conversation would remain appropriate and supportive. When the day arrived, Charlotte approached the meeting with characteristic maturity but obvious nervousness. She had been told that Queen Camilla wanted to speak with her about the gala evening, and while her parents had assured her she had done nothing wrong, she still felt anxious about the confrontation. Queen Camilla arrived precisely on time, bringing with her a small gift, a beautiful leather-bound journal with Charlotte's initials embossed on the cover. She explained that she had chosen it specifically for Charlotte to record her thoughts about the charitable causes she wanted to support, emphasizing that the young princess's passion for helping others was something to be celebrated and nurtured. Sitting across from Charlotte in the comfortable chairs by the window, Camilla spoke directly and honestly about what had happened at the gala. She acknowledged that her comments about Charlotte's speech had been inappropriate and hurtful, and she took full responsibility for the pain she had caused. "Charlotte, I want you to know that what I said about your speech was completely wrong," Camilla said, her voice gentle but clear. "Your presentation was thoughtful, passionate, and exactly what a young person should sound like when they care deeply about helping others. I should have praised you instead of making thoughtless comments." Charlotte listened carefully, her hands folded in her lap, as Camilla continued her apology. The Queen acknowledged that Charlotte had every right to feel hurt and confused by what had happened, and she expressed genuine admiration for how the young princess had handled herself both during and after the incident. "I hope that someday you can forgive me for my mistake," Camilla said. "But more importantly, I hope that you won't let my thoughtless words discourage you from continuing your wonderful work with charities. The world needs young people like you who care about making a difference." Charlotte accepted the apology with grace that impressed both her mother and Queen Camilla. She thanked Camilla for the journal and for taking the time to explain what had happened. While she didn't immediately return to her usual warm relationship with her step-grandmother, she showed remarkable maturity in accepting the apology and moving forward constructively. The private apology, while important for Charlotte's healing, did not fully satisfy the formal requirements that had been established through the official complaint process. Prince William had made it clear that public accountability was necessary to match the public nature of the original offense, and to demonstrate the royal family's commitment to protecting its younger members. After consultation with King Charles and senior palace advisors, it was decided that Queen Camilla would make a public statement acknowledging her error and reaffirming the family's support for Charlotte's charitable endeavors. The statement would be carefully crafted to address the incident without creating unnecessary media attention or speculation about family tensions. The public statement was released through official palace channels exactly 1 week after the charity gala. It acknowledged that Queen Camilla had made inappropriate comments about Princess Charlotte's charitable presentation and expressed regret for any distress caused to the young princess. The statement praised Charlotte's dedication to helping others and emphasized the royal family's commitment to supporting young members in their public duties. The carefully worded statement accomplished several important objectives. It provided public accountability for Queen Camilla's actions, demonstrated the family's protection of Charlotte, and reinforced positive messages about the young princess's charitable work. Most importantly, it showed that the royal family would not tolerate public criticism of its younger members, even from within its own ranks. News outlets picked up the statement with considerable interest, though most coverage focused on praising Charlotte's charitable work rather than dwelling on the family tensions that had prompted the unusual public acknowledgement. Royal commentators noted the unprecedented nature of such a formal apology and speculated about the internal processes that had led to its release. The statement's impact extended beyond immediate media coverage. Other senior royals understood that new standards of accountability had been established for how family members treated one another in public settings. The protection of younger royals from criticism or embarrassment by older family members was now clearly established as a priority that would be formally enforced if necessary. 6 months after the charity gala incident, the long-term effects of Captain Morrison's courageous decision to file his security report had transformed relationships and protocols within the royal household. The palace had implemented new guidelines for public interactions between family members, with specific provisions protecting younger royals from public criticism or embarrassment by senior relatives. During official events, Princess Charlotte had not only recovered from the initial hurt caused by Queen Camilla's comments but had emerged stronger and more confident in her public role. The support she received from her family and the formal accountability that followed had actually reinforced her sense of security and trust in the system designed to protect her. She continued her charitable work with renewed enthusiasm, knowing that her efforts were valued and protected. The new journal that Queen Camilla had given Charlotte during their private meeting had become a treasured possession. Charlotte used it to record her thoughts about different charitable causes, her ideas for future projects, and her reflections on the responsibilities that came with her royal position. The journal served as a symbol of reconciliation while also representing Charlotte's growing maturity and thoughtfulness about her role. Queen Camilla had undergone her own period of reflection and growth following the formal complaint process. She had enrolled in workshops on child psychology and communication, seeking to better understand the impact of adult words on young people's development. Her relationship with Charlotte gradually improved as she demonstrated genuine commitment to being more supportive and encouraging. The relationship between Queen Camilla and Prince William had required more time and effort to repair. While William appreciated Camilla's apology and her efforts to make amends with Charlotte, he remained vigilant about protecting his children from any future incidents. Their interactions became more formal and careful, with clear boundaries established regarding discussions about the children. Captain Morrison's role in the incident had earned him both praise and scrutiny from various quarters. The Royal Protection Service's leadership had ultimately supported his actions, recognizing that his interpretation of his protective duties had been both reasonable and necessary. His willingness to speak truth to power, even when it involved senior royals, had enhanced his reputation for integrity and dedication to his mission. The palace staff, who had witnessed the original incident and its aftermath, spoke of Morrison with increased respect and trust. They understood that he would protect any member of the royal family from harm, regardless of where that threat originated. This knowledge created a stronger sense of security throughout the royal household and reinforced the importance of speaking up when witnessing inappropriate behavior. King Charles had been deeply affected by the entire situation, particularly because it highlighted potential conflicts between his role as a father and grandfather and his position as head of the royal family. He instituted regular family meetings designed to address any concerns or tensions before they could escalate into formal complaints. These sessions emphasized open communication and mutual respect among all family members. The incident also prompted changes in how young royals were prepared for public appearances. Additional support systems were put in place to help children process their experiences after major events, ensuring that any concerns or negative feedback could be addressed immediately rather than allowing problems to fester. Child psychologists became regular consultants to the royal household on matters affecting the younger generation. Charlotte's confidence in public speaking had actually increased following the incident and its resolution. Knowing that her family would stand up for her and hold others accountable for their treatment of her had given her greater courage to take on challenging public roles. She began volunteering to speak at more events and showed increased enthusiasm for representing charitable causes. The broader royal family had learned important lessons about the power dynamics within their ranks and the responsibility that came with their positions of influence. Senior royals became more conscious of their words and actions around younger family members, understanding that their comments carried weight and could have lasting impacts on developing personalities. The media coverage of the incident had generally been positive, focusing on the royal family's commitment to protecting its younger members and Princess Charlotte's admirable dedication to charitable work. Royal commentators praised the family's handling of internal conflicts through proper channels rather than allowing tensions to fester or play out in public venues. Educational institutions and child development experts had taken note of the incident as an example of how organizations could protect young people from inappropriate criticism by authority figures. The royal family's formal response became a case study in institutional accountability, and the importance of having systems in place to address power imbalances that could harm children. Prince William's handling of the situation had enhanced his reputation as both a protective father and a responsible future monarch. His willingness to use formal channels to address inappropriate behavior, even when it involved family members, demonstrated the kind of principled leadership that many expected from him as heir to the throne. The charity that had benefited from Charlotte's original presentation at the gala reported record donations and increased volunteer participation in the months following the incident. Charlotte's speech, despite the controversy that surrounded it, had achieved its intended goal of raising awareness and support for children in need. The young princess took great satisfaction in knowing that her efforts had made a real difference. As the royal family gathered for their next major public event, the dynamics between its members reflected the lessons learned from the charity gala incident. There was greater awareness of the importance of supporting one another publicly, more careful consideration of words and actions, and stronger protections for the younger generation. Captain Morrison continued his duties as head of palace security with renewed understanding of the breadth of his protective responsibilities. His actions had established precedent for when and how security personnel should intervene in situations involving potential emotional or psychological harm to family members. His courage in speaking up had ultimately made the entire royal household safer and more accountable. The incident that had begun with Princess Charlotte's embarrassment at Queen Camilla's thoughtless comments had evolved into a transformative experience for the entire royal family. It had demonstrated the importance of accountability, the power of proper procedures, and the value of standing up for those who cannot always defend themselves. Most importantly, it had shown that even within the most traditional institutions, change was possible when courage met conscience and action followed. Conviction. The palace walls that had witnessed centuries of royal drama and intrigue had seen something new that evening: the successful protection of a child's dignity through formal justice and family accountability. The precedent had been set, the relationships had been rebuilt, and Princess Charlotte had learned that her voice, her work, and her well-being truly mattered to those charged with protecting her.